Marxism is complicated, and frankly, so is trying to learn about it. I mean, on one side, you got people like Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, and Alex Jones trying to say one thing, Marxists saying another, and centrists are always useless, so who do you turn to for that unbiased understanding of an academic philosophy? Well, you can't. That's because it isn't an unbiased academic philosophy. Before we can even begin to try and understand Marxism, it's important to understand the sort of political conflict it's in. Even being in such conflict is no intended consequence. Karl Marx's religious upbringing likely gave him his first instances of radicalization, both in facing discrimination as a Jew in Prussia and in his early Christian devotion and longing for self-sacrifice on behalf of humanity. Even his time at the University of Berlin was filled to the brim with political conflict, like constant arrests all around him by the Prussian government. And while we can say that his synthesis of Hegel's dialectic that he learned in college with the materialism of Ludwig Feuerbach that he learned after was out of the neutral and innocent desire to observe reality, he quickly applied this lens to the social and economic issues that bothered him the most. That is Marxism. What I'm getting at is Marxism isn't impartial, not even on its own. It's a tool founded and grounded in political roots that has evolved over time throughout many generations of political instability and agitated fervor. When looking into Marxism, you have all the landmines to look out for and then some. Misinformation, propaganda, fear-mongering, and even the liberalization of it all. The way liberal academia tries to remain impartial but makes it out to be like Marxism is just some blip in history and devoid of the original revolutionary context meant to be interpreted by the average common person. That, my dear viewers, is why you should learn about Marxism from a Marxist. And with awareness of its radical origins, we can now truly achieve an understanding of its terms and how it's relevant today. Marxism is a philosophical framework, that is to say, a way of looking at things, especially in criticism of what's being observed, and a collection of ideas, that is, the ideas of Marx, Engels, and often the later contributions of other Marxists. The philosophical framework is what is known as dialectical materialism, a nerdy way of saying two observable things are being compared. While that's vague and not very helpful by itself, it's what's being compared that is important. Marxists often compare things like classes, relations between classes with the means of production, the base and superstructure of society, and so on. And I know, just to define two terms I've already thrown about four others, but don't worry, we'll get there. Class is a word with many meanings, but in the context of Marxism, it has to do with classes that have unique relationships with various means of production. Means of production being whatever makes stuff, like the workers themselves, the machines and their workplaces like offices, factories, and so on, where work happens. But don't confuse the means of production with modes of production, because that has more to do with socioeconomic systems, where systems like primitive society, slave society, feudalism, and capitalism have different modes of production that make them stand out from each other. Socioeconomic systems themselves being the overarching structures that detail how a society's resources are owned, produced, and organized. Modes of production don't just determine how goods are produced, but also how relations between social classes are shaped. Each mode of production includes specific relationships between the ruling class, where wealth is concentrated, and the working class, where wealth derives. It is the differences in interests between these two classes that create what is known as a class conflict. Primitive societies were in essentially an early, brief stage in humans that we can justifiably call primitivism, where humans were not yet able to produce beyond the means of each individual, where survival was so difficult that collectivism was absolutely necessary to survive. Once the combination of tools, domestication of animals, farming, and things of that nature were discovered, then could humans produce beyond the means of the individual. This excess product is known as surplus value. More surplus meant greater survival led to larger groups, and for various reasons came into conflict enslaving others for free means of production, which led to the first classes and class relations, that of the slave and the master, which make up slave societies. As we can see, each mode of production is differentiated by specific social relations between classes that are determined by who owns and controls the means of production. These relations being in turn the base and superstructure of society. The base is the economic foundation. Think the foundation of a building. Comprised of it are things like the means of production and the ruling class and their social relations of production. The material conditions of this base determine the form of social, political, and cultural life. In other words, the building itself, which would be the superstructure. The superstructure, on the other hand, consists of the social and non-economic institutions of society, like the political, legal, and education systems, as well as the various cultural institutions like religious groups and media corporations. But this relationship between the base and superstructure is not one-sided. If you take away the economic system and even remove the ruling class, but fail to change the superstructure of society has the potential to redevelop the base. It's a circular relationship where one affects the other. Under capitalism, the base consists of the capitalist mode of production, with its factories, machines, and wage labor, and the social relations of production, where capitalists own and control the means of production, and workers sell their labor power to survive. The superstructure, in turn, reflects and reinforces the economic base, with institutions like the state enforcing things like private property, contracts, executive functions, and the legal system. The state has different meanings, much like class does, and like class means something specific to Marxists. Karl Marx specifically defined the state as a committee that managed the common affairs of the entire ruling class. Lenin expands on Marx's idea of the state, which many Marxists use to this day, that the state is a specialized organization and tool of violent force for the bourgeoisie in the suppression of the proletariat, or working class. A specific condition that happens within the base and is reflected in the superstructure is the feeling of alienation. Alienation, sometimes referred to by Marxists as estrangement, takes many forms and has been observed by various Marxists. One given form of alienation is a type of alienation felt during the activity of production. A disconnect can occur during labor, where work is not done out of intentional and creative spontaneity, but as a means of survival performed for someone else. Another form of alienation is observed when a worker feels disconnected from the products or fruits of their labor. A third identified form of alienation is what Marx considered the separation of human identity, where workers associate themselves with the labor they do without actually owning said means of production or having any actual say in it beyond the considerations of one or more executives that the worker is disconnected from and whose interests differ. This is true with how normalized anti-work sentiment is, and how so many workers barely live beyond their means and to their deaths with uncertain retirement plans. Consumers often fail to be considerate of the labor put into their products and services, all the sweat, blood, and tears it took for farmers to grow their crops, or, in unironically named sweatshops in their clothes, the stress and strain put into delivering packages quickly to homes as a convenience gained at the expense of another, the social relationships and collaboration required to build a home, or how many redos it took before the final cut of an actor in a commercial, and so on. Beyond Karl Marx, another Marxist, Guy Debord, explores alienation further, observing the estrangement created as people chase feelings and things shaped by media and social stigma, like a person buying a really nice car to feel confident and impress others while struggling with the car payments, or the pressure, obligation, and financial burden women often feel in meeting the standards of beauty shaped by the beauty industry and society. But what is commodity fetishism without understanding the commodity? The reduction of a person to their image and name, like the presents on the cereal box, or how Bob Ross disliked his hair but couldn't change it by contract for how infused it was with his branding. Average society is often alienated from the labor that goes into their products as well, known as commodity fetishism. So the observation of this feeling isn't just limited to workers in the acts of labor. Commodification refers to the process under capitalism where something is turned into a commodity or a good or service produced for exchange in the market. People, products and things can be reduced to their monetary value and usefulness under capitalism, like the worker being reduced to a mere wage debit in an executive's financial audit, rather than a human being with human needs and wants, as well as the transformation of use value or the usefulness of a product into the exchange value or price of a product in a market. In terms of the exchange process between commodities, some commodities are bought for the purpose of being sold at a higher profit, this being the capital in capitalism. Capital transforms the circulation of commodities, like in commodity exchange, where one exchanges a commodity for money, which one then exchanges for some other commodity, formula CMC or MCM. This formula comes with its own extended theory, as Marx put in Capital Volume 1, the circulation of money as capital is an end in itself, for the valorization of value takes place only within this constantly renewed movement. The movement of capital is therefore limitless. The aim of the capitalist thus becomes the unceasing movement of profit-making, where it does not hold up well in a world with limited resources. And this formula is reduced even further in the case of usury.
This is a key element to capitalism. For capitalism to thrive, you need to have a huge percentage of the population who accept a slave's life. And when I say a slave's life, I mean that slavery used to mean, here, come work on the cotton field, you could go sleep in the house. Now it means, here, come work in Starbucks, here's some money, use that money to go sleep in your house. It's the same thing, they just put money in the...
Where one owns money in return for the same money with interest, or money, which occurs as seen in the stock market. Money itself, called the money form in this sense, is seen as a commodity as well, the commodity chosen to represent the universal equivalent for all other commodities. Marx saw this as an accidental development, but a development that nonetheless fit the requirement under capitalism for a commodity to hold a constant quality, to be an adequate form of the appearance of value, a material embodiment of equal human labor power. That is Marxism. It can be a powerful tool that deeply expands into the waters of history, science, current events, philosophy, sociology, and economics. It is also hopefully realized by now that Marxism is not primarily concerned with morality, no matter how hard the opposition tries to make such attachments. But I digress. Politics are the lifeblood of all societies, something so true that even those who wish to escape it find themselves in a political position by doing so. Alongside politics are truth and knowledge, important weapons to any person, but truth and knowledge aren't always a certainty either. There is a key difference between those who are confident and refined in their knowledge and their perceptions of what is true, and those who claim to be sources of truth, who are to be blindly trusted where dismissing critical thinking is implied. So in the modern world where politics, societies, and ideologies clash against each other in various forms, it is easy to get lost in the storm. Thankfully, this has been Marxism 101, Marxist terms made easy. If you liked this video or learned something new, then leave a like. If you didn't, then leave a dislike. Subscribe for more content like this.